Morning, folks. Everything new under the sun. I thought this was interesting, only because I kind of follow a few channels, related to Airstreams and living in campers. I follow Nomadic Fanatic, if you know who he is, and he lives in a camper. And there's a lot of people these days on YouTube trying to make a channel and make wages for themselves on YouTube by living in tiny houses and tiny and campers and these sorts of things, living off the grid. I think the overall idea is pretty interesting. So I'm kind of interested in this this genre or whatever of life in general. I think it's interesting how people do it. That being said, this is a Zero Hedge article, and apparently it's more a sign of not that people want to live tiny, live small, etc., and more the fact that people have no other choice. The number of Americans living in their vehicles explodes as the middle class collapses. If the U.S. economy is really doing well, then why is homelessness rising so rapidly? As the gap between rich and poor continues to increase, the middle class is steadily eroding. In fact, I recently gave my readers 15 signs that the middle class in America is systematically destroyed. Is being systematically destroyed, rather. More Americans are falling out of the middle class and into poverty with each passing day, and this is one of the big reasons why the number of homeless is surging. For example, the number of people living in the street in LA has shot up 75% over the last 6 years. And I think San Francisco, is it San Francisco? Which is the next massive problem city with feces and needles all over the place. But of course, LA is far from alone. Other major cities are facing similar problems, including Seattle. Maybe it's Seattle I'm thinking of. It says number of people who live in their vehicles because they can't find affordable housing is on the rise, even though the practice is illegal in many U.S. cities. Number of people residing in campers and other vehicles surged 46% over the past year. Recent homeless census in Seattle's King County, Washington, found the problem is exploding. Washington found, rather, a recent homeless census found. The problem is exploding in cities with expensive housing markets, including Los Angeles, Portland, San Francisco, according to Governing magazine. Amazon, Microsoft, and other big tech companies in the Seattle area are in the Seattle area. It is a region that is supposedly prospering, and yet this is ongoing. I think at some point it's a product of their own success. As people make more money, they're willing to spend more on houses, but that means there's also people who can't afford to live in those big houses. Sadly, it isn't major urban areas that are seeing more people sleeping in their vehicles. Over Sioux Falls, South Dakota, many homeless sleep in their vehicles even in the middle of winter. Stephanie Monroe, Managing Director of Children, Youth, and Family Services at Volunteers of America, Dakotas, tells a similar story. At least 25% of the nonprofit Sioux Falls clients have lived in their vehicles at some point. Many of their communities don't have a former shelter, and it can lead individuals to resorting to live in their cars. So it's an interesting move as more and more people are really forced to live in their vehicles, live in old rotten campers. I think of some of the places that Nomadic Fanatic boondocks overnight in cities, and you'll see all sorts of campers, and which look like basically homeless people living in them. Everything's run down. They obviously haven't moved in a long time, and this is housing for people. And it's probably a lot better than just sleeping on the street. But this is kind of where society's going. The cost of living is increasing, and this just begs for a financial collapse to bring the value of money down to a place that is more workable in the free market, so that everybody has a chance. Now, we're always going to have homeless people. But maybe the homeless number of people wouldn't be so high. Well, a recent market watch, and I'll end in this article, highlighted the plight of the California teacher Matt Berry and his wife Nicole. Berry's wife Nicole teaches as well. They each earn $69,000, a combined salary that not long ago was enough to afford a comfortable family life, but due to astronomical costs in the area, including real estate, a 1,500 square foot starter home costs $680,000. Driving for Uber was a necessity. Teachers are killing themselves, Barry says in Elisa Court's new book, Squeezed: Why Our Family Can't Afford America. It shouldn't be having to drive Uber at 8 o'clock at night on a weekday. I just shut down from the mental toll, grading papers between rides, thinking of what I could be doing instead of driving, like creating a curriculum, it says. So even apparently successful people can't afford the prices. And so what does that mean? That speaks to a housing bubble. That speaks to a place where housing prices have to crash, and all of a sudden you would have lots of bankruptcies as people were holding mortgages that are way more than the house is actually worth. And this is a bubble. This is one of those drops, and the housing bubble is kind of the next thing spoken of by many economic forecasters as kind of one of the next things to go. A massive revaluing of the housing market. So interesting story there, and it kind of describes the signs of the times in terms of the economic trouble. This is what you see when countries start going downhill economically, socially, etc. On the cycle of nations, cycle of empires. This is one of them. You see a downfall into poor and poverty, and more people depending on government, until finally the government can't pay for everybody, and then the economy, the society collapses, and then you start from the bottom again with your pioneers working so hard to make a living. And then you move into affluence and all the other steps of the empires. But it's interesting to see that we're at the end of a cycle of empires, and I really should do another video. I've done a number of videos in the past about that, but now with all the new subscribers, it'd probably be interesting to look at the cycle of nations, the places they move through, an empire or a nation moves through, from poverty to affluence, to economic crash and decadence, and then they start at the bottom again. They do that whole circle again, all the way, as if the United States was doing its 200 years of life all over again, effectively. And so you'd start with the pioneers again, people who were, explorers and etc., and making lives for themselves with no government. Basically, this would be after the collapse of the government. And so it's a complete reset we're talking about. Anyways, interesting article, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next video.